This is a true story inspired by true events, told by a first-hand witness. The actual names have been altered to protect the individuals and their families' privacy. There is the ongoing debate surrounding the existence of aliens, presenting contrasting viewpoints that propose they are either real extraterrestrial beings or manifestations of demonic entities. The debate highlights the opinions of Lue Elizondo, a former Pentagon official who posits that UFOs are demonic in nature and advises against further investigation, juxtaposed with another perspective advocating for continued inquiry into these phenomena. The discussion raises questions about the necessity of probing into the realm of aliens, particularly if they are indeed superior beings or malevolent demons posing potential dangers to humanity. Throughout history, two mysterious phenomena have captured the human imagination and sparked heated debates: the UFO phenomenon and the concept of the devil. While one brings forth questions about extraterrestrial existence and advanced technology beyond our understanding, the other is associated with malevolent and unsettling forces from the spiritual realm. Nevertheless, these two subjects are somehow connected. At the heart of Episode 7 of UFO Chronicles lies a chilling connection between the unearthly and the infernal. As we delve into the perplexing tales of unearthed artifacts and tragic fates, a haunting thread emerges: the presence of a small black glass trinket, seemingly innocuous but harboring a malevolent energy. From the moment this demonic artifact is unearthed by our intrepid protagonist, strange and sinister events unfurl, leaving a trail of inexplicable deaths in its wake. Whether it be fatal accidents or sudden heart attacks, the specter of tragedy looms ominously, seemingly linked to the cursed figurine. But what truly sends shivers down the spine is the uncanny recurrence of the number 13, ominously associated with the tram that claims a life and the license plate of a car involved in a fatal accident. Could this be mere coincidence, or is it a chilling manifestation of a darker force at play? Let's begin. The earth was hard as stone, the pickaxe struggling to scratch what was supposed to be one of the countless diggings that scarred the streets from somewhere on the outskirts of a city in Eastern Europe. The drudge labored tirelessly, grunting with every strike, as if battling an unseen foe from the depths of the earth. Every now and then, he would quench his thirst and exchange a few words with old Dan, a pensioner leaning on his elbows nearby, leaning against a fence. The sun mercilessly scorched the earth on that summer morning. The digger had just been irritated by a layer of rubble that choked the mouth of the pit, cursing fervently at imaginary beings for whom he had to suffer under this blazing sun. Old Dan, probably lacking any other occupation, lifted his spirits by telling him stories of digging trenches in the Kalmyk steppe under the fire of the Katyusha rockets. The man sank deeper and deeper into the earth, feeling as though he was hurrying towards a possibly more welcoming realm. However, it seemed that someone wanted to test the digger's strength, for the deeper he went, the more strangely rocky the layers of earth became, mixed with bricks and debris. The drudge dug with determination, telling himself that if he kept up the pace, he would finish the job by evening, while old Dan's story had reached somewhere around Kuban. While old Dan was just breaking through an enclosure, the digger struggled with a layer of debris from a former construction, with no shortage of glass shards or remnants of various rotten objects and all sorts of rusty debris. Attempting to rest his weary body, the digger leaned on the shovel for a few minutes, contemplating his work. Among the debris that had been cleared away, possibly from a former wall, something shiny and black caught his eye. Carefully digging through the rubble, he managed to retrieve a kind of trinket, black glassy, small enough to fit in the palm of his hand. Under old Dan's mocking gaze, who shouted a warning to be careful of what devilry he found, our worker realized that he held in his hand a trinket, black glassy, representing a small demon, equipped with a tail, hooves, horns, and even a trident. At the sight of the trinket, Old Dan asked the digger to throw it back into the earth as it did not seem to be something clean, and began to make numerous crosses. But it seemed to be too late. The devil had indeed put his tail in, because after spitting on the little demon and polishing it against his pants, our man tied it in a handkerchief, with several knots, just for safety, and began to dig around, saying, "It's a sign that he can find a treasure." Under the reproachful gaze of the old man, the man dug until dusk, the only gain being a new day of work at the site, as the work could not be completed at the moment. He asked the old man to lend him some money to buy booze, under the promise that he would return it the next day when he was supposed to be paid for the work. He took the money and slowly headed towards the tavern on the street corner, where a musician sang accompanied by an accordion. What happened from here on we know from the old man's story, who later told us how after about half an hour, our tired, drunk, and inattentive worker would be fatally injured by a tram that had a route through the area. Bizarre or not, the tram had the number 13. The next day, returning from the market and passing by the horrific scene of the accident, Old Dan recognized the old handkerchief in the grass, which, after stepping on it, he understood still contained the small black glass trinket. How it got there falls into the category of the bizarre, but it is logical that it fell out of the digger's pocket. Precautious, he looked around and seeing that no one was around, took the trinket with the thought of cashing it in on behalf of the money loaned to the unfortunate digger, from whom he could not recover it anyway. With the trinket in his hand, he entered the summer garden, where I, by chance, along with a few riders, sat having a beer. We knew the old man because a few weeks ago, he had sold us a few books. "I found them in the attic, I used to read them, now I don't need them anymore," he argued, counting the money received, which was more than he had asked for, and now, we were witnesses to the effect of our generosity. Asking about the origin of the object, the old man told us the story above in great detail. At the table under an old and huge acacia tree were about 7 or 8 writers, but 2 names are important for the context: Professor Constantine Davis and journalist Vasily Isaac, who was then the director of the morning newspaper. We all studied the little trinket, which I must admit was demonically beautiful. Parenthetically, I noticed it was very hot, but I attributed it to the heat outside, which had sent us all for a cold beer. An impromptu auction began for the sale of the little demon, starting with me, but the final battle took place between Davis and Isaac, each wanting it under the pretext of transforming the little trinket into an original gift. Even today, over 2 decades after the events, I don't know exactly who paid the 4 loaves of bread and the bottle of vodka. This was the last bid with which the demon was auctioned. I know for sure that either Davis or Isaac, or maybe both, were the sponsors of the bid. As for the demon, who knows where it ended up that fateful day. I say this because the old man sat down at a table with a casual friend, who promised to take him home in case he gets drunk, and they didn't leave until they drank in record time all that cursed liter of vodka. This while the old man was happy that he had found someone to tell him how he had escaped from the encirclement at Stalingrad. From the garden, we wouldn't have known that the old man would collapse next to a fence from where the forensic team would barely lift him the next day. We will find out much later about the incident, as well as the fact that the cause of death was a fatal heart attack exacerbated by excessive alcohol consumption combined with heat and of course old age. The memory of that evening remained deeply engraved in my memory, and even now, after many years, I can almost reproduce all the discussions held against a background of general merriment, lots of laughter, and spicy jokes as in any good party. But it seems it wasn't our laughter. I had to leave the city for a while on business, but during my short visits, I learned things that made me think. So, one day, I read in the newspaper that Professor Davis died in a car accident. Later, I learned that the number plate of the car began with 13. Some time before, when we met at a book launch, where a very boring critic was speaking, I noticed that Professor Davis was playing with a small demon. I pretended not to notice, but the professor insisted on showing it to me, asking me mockingly, "Do you remember the little devil?" "We've met," I replied bravely. I regret it now. He was an exceptional man and a great professor. The dead with the dead, and the living with the living, as my grandmother used to say, but it seems someone didn't want it to be so. After a while, I was in the office of the chief editor of the morning newspaper, and where Vasily Isaac passed the baton to his successor, having recently been elected as an MP. To my astonishment, I felt suffocated when, on his desk, among the personal items he was collecting when leaving, I recognized the small demon. He saw me looking at it and, without waiting for me to ask, felt the need to justify himself. "You know, I won it from Davis in a bet, just a few days before he kicked the bucket," he said with a smile, adding in a complicit tone, "After all, I wanted it very much, even back then, you know when." After which he carefully put it in his briefcase. We recalled a few pleasant moments spent with the late Davis, after which we parted cordially, each going our own way. However, the small devil didn't leave my mind. For me, a more complicated period followed, a year of life's waves, which took me through all corners of existence. And so it happened that I was half asleep in front of the TV, in the middle of the night, when I heard the announcer say that Parliament announced the premature death of MP Vasily Isaac, following a fatal heart attack. In a split second, I was wide awake. That's when I understood something dreadful: the cause of the entire series of deaths could be the little demon. From its accidental discovery, 2 of its temporary owners had died in traffic accidents and 2 from heart attacks. I tried to learn something about the fate of the figurine from Larry, the son of the deceased MP, but he knew nothing about it. He searched for it but couldn't find it anywhere. The story remained a curiosity for me until 2003, when I accidentally recounted it to Mr. Victor Peters, editor at the World of Mysteries magazine, who has a particular interest in such occurrences. He remained strangely, very impressed, asking me all sorts of details, which I gladly provided without any vested interest. Little did I know then that he would start looking for the figurine. After a while, I learned from a mutual friend that Mr. Peters wanted to urgently discuss something. I got his phone number and called him, and he informed me that he had found the little demon after his investigations, and he asked to meet, as I was the only surviving witness who knew the whole story of the little devil, which was to be the subject of a sensation show, where I was invited alongside great occultists who wanted to unravel the mystery of the small statuette. The details were to be communicated to me in the following days. However, here the thread breaks, as Mr. Peters never contacted me again, because the very next day a mutual friend, a journalist from the mentioned magazine, Mr. John Gray, informed me that Mr. Peters had been killed by a young speeder, right on a pedestrian crossing. Since then, I have heard nothing more about the little demon or its temporary owners, but as the story and the characters are real, after sufficient reflection, I decided it should be known, at least so, under the guise of an inventory. Are the events presented a coincidence or destiny? Perhaps we will never know. The facts remain. By the way, an old friend called me and informed me that in the antique shop window on Leicester Street, among many other items, there was a small demon made of black glass. Postscriptum, I recounted this story to the chief editor of another magazine, writer Marius Teller, who was deeply impressed by its content. He published it. After the story appeared in the magazine, Marius Teller, half jokingly, half seriously, told me during an editorial meeting that it would be interesting to study the statue of the little demon by occultists and that he would be willing to participate in such an endeavor. I don't know if he went to search for the statue, and I don't know if he found it. Knowing the story, I refused any direct contact and any connection with it from that moment on. In fact, I said then that the appearance of the story in the magazine meant for me the definitive end of the tale. Strange or not, he smiled knowingly and asked me implicitly, "Do you really think it's over?" After some time, I returned from a long trip to Alaska. I called Mr. Teller several times to give him a report about the journey beyond the Arctic Circle. After much insistence, his wife answered, informing me with sorrow that Mr. Marius Teller had died of a heart attack in the middle of the street. Further comments are futile. As we ponder the enigmatic connection between the devil and UFOs, one cannot help but question the boundaries between the terrestrial and the otherworldly. Are these encounters with UFOs merely chance sightings, or do they serve as harbingers of a more sinister presence lurking beyond our understanding? Do the eerie encounters recounted in our stories hint at a darker reality, where malevolent forces seek to influence and manipulate our world? Could the tales of demonic trinkets and tragic fates serve as cautionary tales, reminding us of the dangers that lie beyond the veil of our perceived reality? In the end, as we confront the unsettling reality of these eerie encounters, one thing remains abundantly clear: the line between the extraterrestrial and the infernal may be far more blurred than we dare to imagine. We invite you, our viewers, to join the conversation. Share your thoughts, opinions, and experiences in the comments below. Have you ever encountered something unexplained in the night sky? Have you ever felt a presence lurking in the darkness? Have you ever felt any malevolent presence or experienced a strong sense of déjà vu that sent shivers down your spine? Your insights could shed light on the mysteries that continue to perplex and intrigue us all. Let's explore together and, as always, don't forget to look up.